guards and medical staff attend to injured inmates and evacuate them as new lashes erupt in a prison in Ecuador. Relatives of inmates wait for news about their loved ones after a new riot between detainees at the regional Sierra Centro Norte Cotopaxi prison. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Rich Hiergo Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
Philippine September inflation skyrocketed to four-year high at 6.9%. Russian President Vladimir Putin signs annexation of 4 regions of Ukraine. Avalanche in Indian Himalayas hits climbers and kills 10. A 5.4 magnitude earthquake rocked northwestern Iran and injured more than 500 people. And U.S. President Joe Biden to run again in the 2024 U.S. elections.
Prices of foods and non-food items drive September inflation rate to an all-time high since October 2018. This month's inflation accelerates to 6.9% compared to the 6.3% in August. Mian Corvera files this report.
The country's inflation rate accelerates to 6.9% in September, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority. The rate of increase in the consumer goods and services for the September is way up higher than the 6.3% in August. National Statistician Undersecretary Dennis Mapa said the increase is due to the higher pressure of the prices of selected food items.
Ang nakikita talaga namin na would most likely continue to go up kasi medyo spread na siya sa different commodity groups. Thank you. Yung effect noon ay papasok of course no sa ating crude prices kasi binibili natin yun sa US dollar. So yung pump prices, gasoline and diesel, ito ay unang napektuhan plus of course magkakaroon ito ng impact sa transport. So yung transport commodity group which carries 9% weight sa ating inflation, nakikita rin namin na nagkakaroon sila ng mga spillover effects sa iba pang mga subgroups, particular nga yung pagkain. So, ito yung minomonitor ng Philippine Statistics Authority sa ating mga data collection, yung pagtaas ng fare hike, of course, nitong October, and ang pagtaas ng presyo ng pagkain. Thank you.
Mapa said major contributors to the country's inflation are the higher prices of vegetables, fish, and other kinds of seafoods, sugar, confectionery, and desserts. Secondary contributor is the non-food items such as house rentals, water, electricity, and petroleum products. PSA said the September inflation has not peaked as the agency also expects prices of goods in the next 3 months due to the effects of Typhoon Karding in the agriculture sector and the depreciation of the peso against dollar. September inflation was also within the 6.6 to 7.4% forecast range of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. The year-to-date average inflation stood at 5.1% within the Marcos administration's assumption of 4.5 to 5.5% for the entire 2022. NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan said the country is not spared from the external headwinds. He shared a graph showing how other Southeast Asian countries also see an uptick in their inflation and how the Philippines is in the middle of the pack. He added that the President has directed to convene the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council or LEDAC next week to discuss the government's response to the high inflation.
Of LEDAC and the goals for 2023, and let me focus on the goals for 2023. For 2023, LEDAC aims to approve the common legislative agenda for the 19th Congress and pursue its enactment by addressing the issues that hinder the passage of these measures through the regular convening of LEDAC and its subcommittees. For your information, Your Honor, we are organizing the first meeting of LEDAC next week. It's either Monday or Thursday. We are still some parties are still negotiating on a date, but the President has already earlier approved Thursday meeting.
Mayan Corvera reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
A group of businessmen is confident that the 6.9% inflation rate in September can still slow down in the coming months. Vic Sumintak tells us more.
The Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry, or FFCCI, believes that the 6.9% inflation rate recorded in September can still be slowed down. FFCCI Vice President Cecilio Pedro said the higher inflation is due to the external factor because of soaring prices of petroleum products in the world market and the strong dollar against the peso. Pedro said through the efficient public-private partnership, or PPP, particular in the agriculture sector, which involved in the food production, prices of goods can be reduced.
Hindi naman kailangan pag-aralan yan, no? Obvious naman di ba? Pag dumami ang supply ng oil, bababa ang presyo. So, paano ibababa natin? Let's produce more. Let's be efficient. Sabi ni Presidente, BBM, na let us go high-tech. Bigyan natin ng technology sa agriculture. Gawin natin may makina. Tayo, mano-mano Carabao pa ang ginagamit natin 100 years ago, we were using Carabao. Today, we're still using Carabao. Everywhere, they're using machineries. We're using Carabao. Tapos yung farmers, sila lang. Kaya nahirapan. Walang mangyayari sa atin, sa agriculture. Kaya Carabao ang ginagamit Ay, yung mga malalaking industry, ang lalaki yung Carabao, hindi Carabao, makina. 10 times, maybe 100 times more efficient than the Carabao. Anong pag-usapan natin dyan? So tama si BBM, kailangan, let's go high-tech. Technology is the key. You want to bring down inflation? Go high-tech. You want to bring down prices? Go high-tech.
The FFCCI official said the government should help local farmers increase their food production like meat, chicken, fish, and rice. Food security is assured instead of importing agricultural products. FFCCI are amongst the group in business sector consulted by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in Malacanang to map out the post-pandemic economic recovery plan of the government. Vic Sumintak reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Marcos administration will adhere to a sustainable and responsible initiative to address climate change. The president made the vow as he addresses the opening ceremony for the first multi-stakeholder forum of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Eden Santos has the details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has pledged that his administration's initiative to address climate change will be responsible and sustainable. During his speech at the first Multi-Stakeholders Forum of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DNR, President Marcos said resiliency and adaptation to the new climate change are on top of his administration.
I know it's only a beginning of a challenging but most important task of protecting the only earth and home that we know. As your president, I assure you that our environment and our country's resiliency and adaptation to the new normals of climate change are on top of the national agenda. We ensure that the initiatives we will take will enable us to become smarter, more responsible, more sustainable in all that we do.
The president took note of the significance of the three-day event, since climate change is not just the issue of the day, but the issue of our time. He said the matter needs the assistance, help, and understanding of every citizen of the world to mitigate and adapt to climate change.
The road ahead will be long and it will be tough, but we must stay strong and accept that it will be a battle that we all must wage. And even more importantly, it's a battle that we must win. In this collective fight, we are not soldiers. We are stewards. There will be no weapons to use, only behaviors and practices to improve upon. Victory will not come by defeating the visible enemy. It will come in certain moments when we can see that we are gradually averting a global crisis, that we have attended to the difficulties that our people will face because of the onset of climate change. And triumphant will we be when we realize that our children will have clean air to breathe, safe water to drink, and lands and oceans not only to explore, but also to responsibly harness for their sake and for the good of all Filipinos and for all humanity.
The forum brought together government agencies and the private sector to help the DENR create a policy agenda that would include a multi-year roadmap for program activities and projects.
Along with the outcomes of this forum, I expect that we will be able to accelerate the DENR's mission of mobilizing our capacities and resources to preserve, conserve, and manage our environment. I also expect this forum to lay down a strategic direction to maximize the use of the country's natural wealth and to promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth. I'm confident we will be able to have these dialogues amongst all stakeholders. And in that dialogue, let us identify each sector's unique and shared challenges, bolster cooperation, and gather information on priorities for possible inclusion in the DENR's policy agenda and to be included in the multi-year roadmap for programs, activities, and projects.
Eden Santos reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Attorney Vic Rodriguez has confirmed that he is totally out of the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. In a statement, Rodriguez said he personally discussed with Marcos his personal decision to spend his time with his family, and he is happy with the decision. He added that his silence on issues hurled against him involving his position as executive secretary is in respect to the president and the office of the executive secretary. Rodriguez lamented the criticisms and ridicules against him. He said he will continue his private practice as a lawyer and would still help the government and call on the public support to President Marcos and the country as a whole. Malacanang has shortlisted candidates for the position of press secretary, vacated by former press secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles. The name includes former press secretary Mike Toledo, transportation undersecretary Cesar Chavez, film director Paul Soriano, and former Cavite representative Gilbert Remulla. Chavez confirmed in a phone interview that he is one of being considered, but he's not interested in the position. Soriano, in a news website interview, said there was a conversation on the matter, but he thinks the position needs qualified people to help the president. In an event also attended by President Marcos, Toledo was asked by Palace reporters, and he denied he discussed the matter with the president. But Toledo admitted that he is willing to accept if the position is offered to him by Malacanang. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is set to enact into law on Thursday, October 6, the postponement of the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections and moving it to the last Monday of October in 2023. This follows the signing ceremony by Congress leaders on the enrolled copy of the bicameral conference committee report ratified by both chambers. But still, the Commission on Elections said they are 80% ready. In any case, the election will push through. The National Printing Office has also started the printing of the official ballots.
COMELEC spokesperson Attorney John Rex Laudianco assured that no government resources are wasted in the BSKE preparations, since the ballot can still be used in the next elections. For 2023 BSKE, Laudianco said the COMELEC would need an additional 10 billion pesos from the 8.4 billion pesos needed if the election pushes through this year. The COMELEC is also focusing on laying the grounds for electoral reforms, including empowering law enforcers to arrest people involved in vote buying and selling, and increasing the budget per voter of a candidate. The COMELEC would also propose to make nuisance candidacy an election offense with a penalty of 6 years imprisonment. The Commission on Human Rights has started its motu proprio investigation on the killing of radio broadcaster Percy Lapid in Las Piñas City on Monday night. In a statement, the CHR also expressed support to the media community in denouncing and condemning the brazen attack on Lapid, Percival Mabasa in real life. The CHR took note of Lapid's critical views on the policies and some personalities under the Duterte and Marcos Jr. administrations. The CHR called on the law enforcement officers to capture the perpetrators. Coming up, Iran quake injures more than 500 people. 10 dead after Indian Himalayas avalanche hits climber. And Russian President Vladimir Putin formally annexes more than 15% of Ukraine. More of these stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Hello, Cupcakes! Ito po si Gardo Versosa.
Si Gardo? Alam mo, si Gardo.
Good morning. Yes.
Good morning.
Niimbitahan ko po kayo na panoorin at samahan nyo kami magluto ng mga Pinoy classics. Dito po sa Lutong Dasa sa Net 25.
Tayo pag together, walang talo pag together, let's get together sa Net 25.
Maiinit na talakayan.
Nauna po tayo sa Asia. Dapat hindi tayo kulelat katulad ngayon. Bayad na ito, may krisis na darating na kuryente, pwede natin pag-aralan kung dapat paanda rin to.
Sa tingin mo ba, ito'y magtatapos sa magandang kinabukasan sa panahon ng isang Marcos ulit?
Hihimayin ang mga kontrobersiya.
My father saw FM as a mentor. You know, everything we owned was taken from us.
Kasama si Attorney Sal Panelo at Congressman Mark Coampo.
Sana you didn't make it so hard for us.
Sa Counterpoint, tuwing Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi, dito sa Net 25.
This is a hard show.
This We bring you more news here on Mata ng Agila International. A 5.4 magnitude earthquake rocked northwestern Iran and injured more than 500 people early Wednesday, according to state media. Regional Governor Mohammad Sadegh Mohammadian said the quake hit at a depth of 10 kilometers in West Azerbaijan province. The tremor and its aftershocks also damaged 500 houses, completely destroying 50 of them in 12 affected villages. He added that though most of the victims suffered light injuries, 135 of them were sent and admitted to the hospital. Iran sits astride the boundaries of several major tectonic plates and experiences frequent seismic activity.
10 people are confirmed dead after an avalanche struck climbers in the Indian Himalayas, police said, with 18 other members of the expedition still missing. The Uttarakhand State Police Force said the rescue teams recovered 10 bodies after operations resumed in the morning. Moreover, 14 people have already been rescued from the site of the avalanche, having 5 of them being treated at a district hospital in Uttarkashi. In a tweet, Uttarakhand Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami confirmed that accomplished climber Savita Kanswal, who had submitted Everest earlier this year, was among the dead. The expedition, which climbers stuck in a crevasse after the avalanche hit, was composed of 34 trainees, 7 instructors, and a nursing assistant.
At least 25 people were killed after a bus carrying wedding guests veered off the road and fell into a deep gorge in northern India, according to police. Traveling along a treacherous mountain highway in Uttarakhand state, the vehicle careened over an edge and plunged at least 500 meters, having about 45 people on board. The state's top police official, Ashok Kumar, confirmed that 20 people have been rescued. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in a tweet that in that tragic hour, his thoughts are with the bereaved families and all possible assistance would be given to the survivors. Deadly road accidents are common in Uttarakhand, which encompasses part of the Indian Himalayas. Annually, 150,000 car crash fatalities happen in India, which cost the Indian economy around $75 billion, including medical expenses and loss of income, leading many accident survivors into poverty.
Hundreds of homes are destroyed, thousands of people are homeless, and roads are left inaccessible after the worst flooding in a decade in Nigeria's Kogi state. Now twice victimized by flooding, Gadumo community resident Saka Zacchaeus says the 2012 flood came and covered his entire house. He used his retirement money to build a new one. That house is now underwater. Zacchaeus says he has nothing again. Displaced residents with none left to call their own seek the government's help.
The UN World Food Programme appeals for $816 million in aid for flood-hit Pakistan. Chris Kay, country director for UN's World Food Programme in Pakistan, says they are entering the second wave of the humanitarian crisis and that they are now seeing a real health crisis.
Open defecation into that open standing water. There are, of course, huge numbers of mosquitoes carrying dengue, carrying malaria. There are horrific skin diseases now which are beginning to emerge. The problem that we face in the immediate 3-4 weeks or so now is really very much associated with the health emergency. And the reality there for women and children was just the challenge of existing in a protected and safe manner with any kind of dignity when they're still living on the side of the road. So shelter issues are equally important. Helping families get back to their homes as floodwaters recede.
President Vladimir Putin completed the formal annexation of more than 15% of Ukraine, just as Russian forces battled to stop Ukrainian counteroffensive across strips of the territory. Putin signed laws admitting the Donetsk People's Republic, the Luhansk People's Republic, Kherson region, and Zaporizhia region into Russia. The annexation is the biggest expansion of Russian territory in at least half a century. The lower house of the Russian parliament said Putin also signed the relevant laws on ratification. Kremlin declared the annexations after holding what it called referendums in occupied areas of Ukraine. The areas that are being annexed are not all under the control of Russian forces, which are battling Ukrainian forces. Hence, Western governments and Kyiv argued the votes breached international law and were coercive and non-representative.
Russia will resume gas deliveries to Italy after suspending them due to a transport problem in Austria. Russian energy giant Gazprom said that in a statement. On Saturday, Gazprom suspended gas deliveries to Italy, blaming a transport problem in Austria. But today, it said that a solution was found with Italian buyers following regulatory changes in Austria. Most Russian gas delivered to Italy passes via Ukraine through the Trans-Austria gas pipeline to Tarvisio in northern Italy on the border with Austria. Italian energy company Eni welcomed the resolution by all the parties concerned of the constraints resulting from the new regulations introduced by Austria. Before the conflict in Ukraine, Italy imported 95% of the gas it consumes, about 45% of which came from Russia. North Korea's launch of a ballistic missile over Japan drew sharp criticism from several nations. U.S. Department of State Principal Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel expresses America's disapproval of North Korea's actions.
To say that the U.S. government condemns this dangerous and reckless launch, we think that is unacceptable. It is a clear violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions, and it again demonstrates the DPRK's unlawful and destabilizing activities in the region.
The latest launch comes in a record year of sanctions-busting weapons tests by North Korea. The country recently revised its laws to declare itself an irreversible nuclear power. Vietnamese fisherman Nguyen Van Loc has been attacked by the Chinese Coast Guard vessel so many times he has actually lost count. One summer day in 2020, while sailing through the Paracel Islands, his boat was rammed by a Chinese ship repeatedly until it capsized. 13 of his crewmen were left clinging to a fishing basket in the water, desperately awaiting help. The said islands are resource-rich waters in the South China Sea, claimed by both Hanoi and Beijing. Loc, aged 43, was beaten over and over while his boat was stripped of their catch, tools, and fishing gear. Some years before that, two Chinese vessels with large machine guns and crew armed with axes slammed into Loc's boat and followed them closely as they tried to make their way home. Vietnam's Ministry of Foreign Affairs asked Beijing to investigate the incident. Since 2014, 98 Vietnamese boats have been destroyed by Chinese vessels, according to figures from the local fishing association on Luzon. Uganda confirmed the death of another health worker from Ebola, bringing the total number of fatalities from the highly contagious virus to 10. The latest death comes 2 weeks after the government declared an outbreak. The late Margaret is the fourth health worker we have lost in the current Ebola outbreak, Health Minister Jane Ruth Aseng, or Aseng, said on Twitter, following the deaths of a Tanzanian doctor, a health assistant, and a midwife. According to the Health Ministry's last update on Monday, the total number of cases identified in the East African nation stood at 43. Yet President Yoweri Museveni has vowed not to impose any lockdowns to tackle the disease, saying last week that there was no need for anxiety. Ebola is an often fatal viral hemorrhagic fever named after a river in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where it was discovered in 1976. Human transmission is through bodily fluids, with the main symptoms being fever, vomiting, bleeding, and diarrhea. People who are not infected or who are infected do not become contagious until symptoms appear, which is after an incubation period of between 2 and 21 days. A range of experimental drugs is in development since there is currently no licensed medication to prevent or treat Ebola. In Cape Town, a new strain of avian flu is threatening the already endangered African penguin. Dr. David Roberts, a clinical vet working for the Southern African Foundation for the Conservation of Coastal Birds, or SANCOB, says the numbers are decreasing from a lack of food to habitat destruction to the collapse of the ocean ecosystem. He says the penguins cannot really handle any extra pressure on their population and that sick birds have to be put down to curb the spread.
So if an African penguin or any other bird is diagnosed with having avian influenza, it is an untreatable disease, and therefore we do have to put them down. Usually they do die within the first 24 hours anyway. So we remove them from environment and we put them down, and then we dispose of anything that's been, any of the affected materials safely.
Close to 30 African penguins have died due to avian flu since mid-August at Boulders Beach near Cape Town. Boulders Beach is a crucial breeding site in South Africa. SANCOB is working in a joint effort with the South African National Parks, or SANParks, to spot more birds that might have caught the virus. Roberts says if the disease spreads from wild birds to commercial chickens or other poultry, that can lead to closures of the poultry industry. A lot of birds would then die, and that can have huge economic consequences. New clashes and violence hit Ecuador prison. Former U.S. President Donald Trump files an emergency appeal to Supreme Court. And John Clauser wins a Nobel Prize in Physics 2022. Mata ng Agila International will be right back. Please stay tuned.
Pre-net. Wala pong monthly yan. Ito po, pre-net. Kaya po napili po ng only po sa Instant Award po namin. Pwede po ba natin i-showcase yung outfit natin? Oh!
Mayroong isang babae na malapit ng ikasal.
Ano yung baby ko?
Papayag, bakit?
Ilabas mo na!
Akin to. Ako may-ari nito.
Tol, yung baby. Akin yun. Matagal ko lang pagmamayari yun. Akin na yan.
Ayan, sa'yo na yan, ha?
Oh, baby.
Napapunta po kami ng office namin para kukunin na po yung ilipat nyo ng mga gamit.
Para saan? Wala naman akong service na tinap.
Yes po, lipat bahay po kami. Dito sir, unahin daw po namin yung mga malalaking gamit.
Wala naman akong malaking gamit.
Mga malalaking.
Napipikon ako sa'yo.
Fair tayo, sumakit ang ulo ko, sumakit ang bewang ko. Sex bomb, sex bomb, sex bomb.
Oh no, it's Bill only. Sunday 25.
Tayo pag together, wala tayo pag together, let's dance together. Sunday 25.
The State Prison Administration Authority has reported new clashes have erupted in an Ecuadorian prison. Just a day earlier, 15 people died and 21 were injured when riots broke out in the same facility. The Latacunga prison sits in the center of Ecuador. Authorities say the most recent clashes took place in a medium security part of the prison that houses 4,300 inmates. Detonations were recorded. Authorities said police were containing the inmates. No deaths have been reported as a result of the latest riots. Following Monday's massacre, worried relatives waited outside the prison hoping for information on their loved ones. Prison violence has left more than 400 prisoners dead since February of 2021.
Demonstrations over the recent death of Mahsa Amini in Iran have now reached the Netherlands. Hundreds of protesters marched to the Dutch parliament. They are voicing their outrage over the death of 22-year-old Amini at the hands of Iran's so-called morality police. Amini's death has sparked the biggest waves of protests in Iran in almost 3 years. Iranian Authorities have cracked down on demonstrators and scores of protesters have been killed and hundreds arrested. The European Union is now weighing tough new sanctions in light of growing demonstrations. The United States has already imposed sanctions to show its disapproval of Amini's death. Abir al-Salani, a Swedish member of the European Parliament, cuts her hair during a speech in Strasbourg to show solidarity with protesters in Iran.
We, the peoples and the citizens of the EU, demand the unconditional and immediate stop of all the violence against the women and men in Iran. Until Iran is free, our fury will be bigger than the oppressors. Until the women of Iran are free, we are going to stand with you. Jian, Azadi, women, life, freedom.
Protests have rocked Iran since 22-year-old Kurdish woman Mahsa Amini died on September 16 after her arrest by the morality police in Tehran for allegedly failing to observe the Islamic Republic's strict dress code for women.
RT News reported that U.S. President Joe Biden is running for re-election in 2024. The article cited the statement of White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre made during a recent press briefing. The presidential spokeswoman claimed Biden had already publicly committed to the race, even as his party has grown cold on his chances. The president has said this himself. He intends to run in 2024, Jean-Pierre affirmed before attempting to explain why she could not offer her personal opinion on the matter, citing the Hatch Act, which prohibits federal employees from participating in political campaigns. Biden, who would be 86 at the end of a second term, has so far studiously avoided committing to another campaign, according to RT News. He did tell CBS it was his intention to seek re-election last month, but stressed that it was not his firm decision, according to the news agency. Meanwhile, voter enthusiasm among Democrats has slumped 5 points in the last month alone, and more than half of party voters polled last month wanted Biden to retire at the end of his first term.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has filed an emergency appeal with the Supreme Court, asking justices to overturn a recent decision by a federal appeals court. The lower judge denied any independent review of the allegedly classified papers, which insisted the documents in question are in fact classified and belong to the government rather than a former commander-in-chief. Any limit on the comprehensive and transparent review of materials seized in the extraordinary raid of a resident or president's home erodes public confidence in our system of justice, attorney wrote in the filing, adding that the government has attempted to criminalize a document management dispute and now vehemently objects to a transparent process that provides much-needed oversight. Trump's legal team contended that an independent review is needed for 100 documents seized from his home during an August 8 FBI raid, arguing that a specially designated judicial official should determine whether documents bearing classification markings are indeed classified. Should justices take up Trump's request, the documents will undergo analysis. The former POTUS instead pleaded with the court to simply return the documents to Special Master Raymond Deary, a third-party judge who was previously tapped to review the papers. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas later ordered the Justice Department to respond to Trump's emergency filing by next Tuesday, although the court itself has no hard deadline for when it must reply to the appeal.
After 3 months of severe shortage, the first shipment of rice is being unloaded in Comoros. Rice is the staple food for the nearly 870,000 inhabitants of this Indian Ocean archipelago. The communication officer for the rice importer says the shipment dates have been respected this time. Moroni residents, although happy about the news, are skeptical because earlier announcements of rice shipments ran out fast, leaving many empty-handed.
Government aide Brittany Higgins arrived at the Supreme Court in Canberra and gave her first direct testimony to a high-profile rape trial. Brittany Higgins alleged she was raped by former political aide Bruce Lerman on a couch inside a minister's office in the early hours of March 23, 2019. During the trial, Higgins also described the boozy culture of Australian politics. She testified that on one occasion before the alleged rape, Lerman had tried to kiss her after the pair had been drinking. Lerman denied the charges. He was also present in the courtroom during Higgins' testimony. Both Lerman and Higgins were political aides for Australia's previous centre-right government. A number of prominent Australian politicians, government officials, and journalists are expected to give evidence in the course of the trial.
Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel wins the United Nations Refugee Agency's prestigious Nansen Award. Merkel receives praise for her determination to protect asylum seekers while in office. The UNHCR Selection Committee hails Merkel's leadership, courage, and compassion. The selection committee points to the more than 1.2 million refugees and asylum seekers welcomed by Germany in 2015 and 2016 at the height of the migrant crisis, sparked especially by the war in Syria. At the time, the woman who led the German government for 16 years said the situation put European values to the test as seldom before. Merkel said it was no more and no less than a humanitarian imperative. The UN Refugee Agency highlights how she had called on her fellow Germans to reject divisive nationalism, urging them instead to be compassionate and open-minded. UNHCR Chief Filippo Grandi says by helping more than 1 million refugees to survive and rebuild, Angela Merkel displayed great moral and political courage.
American physicist John Clauser won the 2022 Nobel Prize for a groundbreaking experiment vindicating quantum mechanics, a fundamental theory governing the subatomic world that is today the foundation for an emerging class of ultra-powerful computers.
I suppose it's a vindication of work that I had started more than 50 years ago, and at that time everybody told me I was wasting my time, that it was a totally foolish pursuit, and that I would destroy my career. Everybody knew what the results of the experiments would be, and I was just wasting everybody's time and money by trying to
Clauser carried out his work way back in the 1970s and admitted that he expected the opposite result to verify Albert Einstein's decision to dismiss it, proving that quantum mechanics was giving incorrect predictions. Born in Pasadena in 1942 and the son of a former engineer that designed planes in war, Clauser used to wander around his father's laboratory where he dreamed to grow up being a scientist. After graduating from Columbia way back in the mid-1960s, he grew fascinated with quantum physics alongside his thesis work on radio astronomy. The 2022 Nobel Prize winner encouraged others to pursue on doing what they love, but he reminded them to be careful in doing good physics without making assumptions that they cannot back up.
Coming right up, Argentine scientists worried after a spate of whale deaths. Elon Musk offers to close Twitter buyout deal at original price. And Kim Kardashian pays over $1 million to settle SEC charges. Know more about these stories when Matanang Agila International returns.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Ay lalabas natin ang angking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
So sporty naman! Talagang batang dagat! Ay, ang aliwalas naman talaga. May struggle din, di ba?
Ang tingin sa'yo, hindi ka marunong umarte. Isang araw, titingalain din ako.
Naku, may mga kwento sa kanilang dalawa ni Sanjo Marudo. Totoo ba? Galing sa nanay.
Mulat sila sa buhay ng may kaya. Binalanse ko pag ito lang alam ng mga bata, hindi mo maiwasan. Iba yung tingin nila sa mga mahirap. Ayokong mangyari yun kasi ako yun.
Southern Argentina's string of whale deaths in recent days have worried scientists, and microalgae could be blamed. According to Whale Conservation Institute, just from September 24 to October 2, at least 13 southern right whales died in the Nuevo Gulf, a sanctuary and breeding ground for huge mammals. Aside from undergoing the recovered whales to autopsies, water and mollusks were also tested to determine the presence of possible biotoxins linked to the proliferation of harmful algal blooms known as red tides. The ICB confirmed there were no signs of injuries and traumas among discovered whales, and all were well fed. Meanwhile, Whale Program Director Marcela Uhart pointed out that the death of a large number of whales may be due to a local environmental variable such as algal bloom that produces natural toxins which cause harm to organisms living in the water. Elon Musk offered to push through with his buyout of Twitter at the original agreed price as a trial over his efforts to withdraw from the deal loomed. Filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the world's richest man revealed that he sent Twitter a letter to honor the contract. For its part, Twitter confirms it received a letter from Musk, saying Musk intends to close the buyout deal at the agreed price of $54.20 billion or $54.20 share, with noted conditions that the court must stop the filed lawsuit against him. Moreover, in a tweet, the 51-year-old said that buying Twitter is an accelerant to creating X, the everything app, with no additional details. Musk established the X.com in 1999, and by buying Twitter, he believes that in 3 to 5 years, it would help X.com to achieve a grander vision than he thought of the website.
The British government announces that it is backtracking on its plans to abolish the highest rate of income tax for the UK's top earners. The planned cut was unveiled just 10 days ago as part of Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng's mini-budget alongside a raft of tax cuts that plunged the financial markets into turmoil and caused the value of the pound to plummet. From UK, here's Arian Celestino.
Britain's beleaguered finance minister on Monday announced a dramatic U-turn on a tax cut announced as a part of an economic package that is bound with the markets, electorate and his party. The change of course by Chancellor of the Exchequer Kwasi Kwarteng and by Prime Minister Liz Truss raised questions about their right-wing project less than a month after she succeeded Boris Johnson. Their plan also comprises lifting a cap on bankers' bonuses and reversing a planned rise in corporation tax, as well as a recent hike in national insurance contributions. At the same time, they are refusing to rule out cuts to spending and benefits in the middle of Britain's worst cost of living crisis in generations. The perceived unfairness of the package had ignited a political storm with senior Tory MPs refusing to confirm they would support it in Parliament, as well as tanking with voters in opinion polls. On the markets, Truss and Kwarteng's intention to pay for the tax cuts with billions more in extra borrowing had sent the pound tumbling and UK government bond yields soaring. As the Tories began gathering for their fourth-day gathering in Birmingham, senior party figures were nervous. Gove, ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson's right-hand man in the 2016 Brexit campaign, said he was profoundly worried. One YouGov survey Friday found 51% of Britons think she should resign and 54% want Kwarteng to go. Several other polls in recent days showed a Liberal lead of up to 33 points over the Tories, its biggest since the heyday of former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair in the late 1990s. From London, United Kingdom, this is Arian Celestino for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
According to an investigation by Chess.com, it is likely Hans Niemann has cheated much more often than he has acknowledged. Chess.com has produced a 72-page investigation into Niemann's games on the site, which most of the world's top players compete on, including for cash prizes. Yet, although his results are statistically extraordinary, Chess.com said there was no direct evidence Niemann had cheated in his win against Magnus Carlsen or in other over-the-board games in the past. The cheating scandal began earlier this month after Carlsen, considered by many to be the greatest player of all time, was defeated by Niemann at the Sinkfield Cup in a major upset. Carlsen previously suggested Niemann had cheated in their game, saying he wasn't tense or even fully concentrating while outplaying him using the black pieces. The sports site said there were certain aspects of the game that were suspicious, including Niemann's explanation of the game afterward. As of this writing, Niemann offered no comment to Chess.com's findings. Kim Kardashian's crypto post misadventure has landed her in hot water with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The reality TV superstar was fined for not disclosing that she was paid $250,000 over one of her Instagram posts in 2021 that promoted an EMAX token. Kardashian did not deny or admit to the SEC's findings. Gary Gensler, chairman of the SEC, said in a news release, Kardashian's case also serves as a reminder that the law requires celebrities and others to disclose when and how much they are paid to promote investing in securities. The influencer will also cooperate with an ongoing investigation and has agreed to not promote crypto securities for 3 years, according to Gensler.
In a statement, a lawyer for Kardashian said she is pleased to have resolved the matter.
Let's take a look back on some historical events that happened on this day, October 5. In 1947, first televised presidential speech in the United States was made. President Harry Truman called on Americans to use less grain to help Europe, which was still reeling from the effects of the Second World War. In 1962, the fictional British spy James Bond with the codename 007 was featured on the big screen for the first time in Dr. No. Based on the 1958 Ian Fleming novel of the same name, the movie starred Sean Connery as James Bond. And in 2011, American businessman Steve Jobs, a pioneer of the personal computer era, who co-founded Apple and transformed it into one of the world's most successful companies, died at age 56.
And now, to help you go through this week, here's a quote from Kurt Cobain, an American musician. If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. Sometimes there are opportunities that you have to create for yourself.
Exactly.
You know, especially when you find a need that needs to be filled, that's your opportunity. Get in.
Yeah, and sometimes it is disguised as something else, but that is the opportunity.
You have to look, be able to appreciate it, to recognize. And that's a wrap for tonight's News Catch. The latest updates on our social media channels. I am CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Richie Flores. Do stay tuned for Attorney Sal Panelo's Counterpoint with Congressman Mark Coanco up next. This is Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.